I gotta say, I think this is a very exciting time in the fight for free speech online, especially since the Project Veritas leaks recently, along with Senator Hawley's new proposal regarding the Communications Decency Act. Big Silicon Valley tech giants have got to be feeling just a little concerned right now. Big Silicon Valley juggernauts have been left unchecked for many years now, and they've amassed enormous power and influence in our society. And they've gotten used to that power and position, and they've also gradually started to believe that they deserve to have it. They've been getting away with censorship for a while. Their political biases are evident in their company cultures. James Damore was fired by Google for his memo, which cited the reasons why many women don't go into tech fields as much as men do. Sexual dimorphism, of course. And he described the culture in Google as being like that of a cult. If that's true, well, people in cults are very much divorced from reality, and they certainly don't think rationally or logically about what they're doing. So they certainly don't see what's coming down the line. As the saying goes, you can deny reality, but you can't deny the consequences of denying reality. I'm getting a sense that Google are in a crisis with all these leaks that are happening, and from their public reaction to it, I get the sense that they're a bit rudderless in terms of leadership. I don't think they have any contingency plan in place for what happens when they're forced to face irrefutable evidence that they've been behaving unethically in terms of some of their policies and their treatment of some of their users on their platforms. They really don't know how to deal with this. This video is about big tech, but I'm going to mainly focus on Google because obviously they're more in the news lately, and I think the biggest threat to free speech comes from Google. Last year, Breitbart leaked a Google town hall meeting video featuring some top brass at Google. It took place shortly after the election of Donald Trump, and they're not happy about this election. CFO Ruth Porat literally breaks down talking about it.
People are leaving, staff is crying, we're gonna lose. That was the first moment I really felt like we were going to lose. And it was this massive, kick in the gut that we were going to lose. And it was really painful.
So this seems very personal to them. Anyway, at the end of her speech, she says the following.
I suggested that what we all need right now is a hug. So everybody, if you could turn around or go to the person next to you and do a hug. It works.
Hugs. This is just weird. But then again, so is this.
Speaking to white men, there's an opportunity for you right now to understand your privilege in the society. Take the opportunity to go through the bias-busting training, read about privilege, read about the real history of oppression in our country, and tomorrow night, watch 13th, the movie that is here. If you can't watch it here, watch it on Netflix. Discuss the issues you are passionate about during Thanksgiving dinner, and don't back down and laugh it off when you hear the voice of oppression speak through metaphors, and I promise to do this.
Okay, so I think that gives you somewhat of an insight into the company culture. Anyway, at 54 minutes 31 seconds, we have this question from an audience member.
Audience question, yes.
So Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it useful. But during this election cycle, we've seen a lot of misinformation, disinformation. We've seen a lot of fake news coming from fake news websites being shared by millions of low information voters.
Low information voters. Well, there's some impressive smug, if ever I heard it.
On social media. And ultimately, there's been many, many people who've been voting, who've been acting based on completely made up information. So can Google do anything to try to filter this out, to try to do something against very organized, very intense campaigns of disinformation targeted at low information people?
Of course, no examples of what qualifies as fake news and misinformation is given here. Anyway, this is all very ironic as most fake news comes from the mainstream media, which is left-leaning, obviously, and Google considers the mainstream media to be authoritative news these days. So Sundar Pichai talks about AI and machine learning being used to detect and remove what Google claims to be fake news and misinformation.
Look, I think our investments in machine learning and AI is a big opportunity here. There are work we have done. The Jigsaw team did around what they call conversation AI, around, to look at bullying and, commenting. And so a lot of this is a problem of scale and not being able to keep up. So human systems fail in many of these things. So I think, but investing more in machine learning and AI could be one way we actually make progress on some of this, some of this stuff. But I think we should do more.
We're supposed to trust them, that they know what the truth is in every situation? Yeah, of course. I'd prefer if the public were allowed to decide for themselves what the truth is, based upon all available information. I trust the public more than I trust Google to decide what's real and what isn't. The best way to arrive at the truth is to give people access to lots of sources of information and to have a wide and varied public discourse, thus allowing the best ideas to rise to the surface. To do anything else would be to limit the spread of information, and such systems could be rife for corruption. VP for Global Affairs Kent Walker is asked this question at 56 minutes 12 seconds.
One of the main messages I've gotten from all of you today is that this election and others like it around the world are a hiccup in history's arc towards progress. But what makes you so sure about that? I mean, is this a relatively new arc, or is this the same arc that has included 2 world wars?
So this is how Kent Walker replies to this question.
There are no guarantees, right? And there are, hiccup is a kind word. History is not a linear pattern. We do everything we can to keep it moving in a good direction. If you look over the broad reach of any 20, 50, 100-year period, there's less death, life expectancy goes up, people are doing better, more prosperous. The arc does go like this exponentially in terms of standards of living around the world. Yes, it's not completely smooth, it goes up and down, and I think history teaches us that there are periods of populism, of nationalism that rise up, and that's all the reason we need to be in the arena. That's why we have to work so hard to make sure it doesn't turn into a world war or something catastrophic, but instead is a blip, is a hiccup.
And then Ruth Porat chimes in at this point, and she says the following.
But I would say echo Kent's last sentence, because the reason I commented on Hillary's statement that we have to continue to believe that we can fight for that which we value, and it's all of our obligation. We can't give up, we can't be complacent, we have to know what our values are, and we have to fight for them and protect them.
So if I'm hearing this right, we have Google top brass complaining about Trump's election in 2016, and they have concerns about populism and nationalism, and they're admitting that they should be involved in the arena, as Kent Walker says. It sounds like they believe it's their responsibility in determining political outcomes. Google is admitting that they are a political actor, that they have an agenda, that they have to fight for it. Keep in mind, Google is supposed to be impartial. But here's Sergey Brin talking about how offended he is at the election of Trump at 1 minute 12 seconds.
Myself, as an immigrant and a refugee, I certainly find this election deeply offensive, and I know many of you do too. And I think it's a very stressful time, and it conflicts with many of our values.
So the election of Trump conflicts with their values. At 9 minutes, Kent Walker tries to explain the motivations of Trump supporters.
The forces out there seem well beyond you. Globalization, immigration, trade, whatever else, and you're afraid and you're trying to look for answers. And that fear, I think, not just in the United States, but around the world, is what's fueling concerns, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there. It's feeling a distrust of experts and disregard of traditional institutions.
So the bias is extremely clear here. I mean, they're openly admitting that Google needs to get involved politically, and it's clear what their political leaning is. So this all correlates with what the Google whistleblower recently told Project Veritas.
Right after Donald Trump won the election in 2016, the company did a complete 180 in what they thought was important. Before, they thought self-expression and giving everyone a voice was important, but now they're like, hey, there's a lot of hate, and because there's a lot of hate, misogyny, and racism, that's the reason why Donald Trump got elected. And so we need to fix that, and we need to start policing our users, because we don't like to have an outcome like that. We don't want to have an outcome like that to happen again.
He talks about machine learning and the biasing of algorithms, so all of this connects with a lot of what was talked about in the Google town hall meeting. So the treatment of conservatives on Google over the past year, on YouTube with limited state, removal of videos from recommended and suggested feeds, demonetization, etc. We've seen all of this happen on the outside. We've experienced it. We've known something was up. Now we have some inside track, and even though Google keep telling us that there's no political bias, they admit privately that they have a political bias, and they also admit that they want to stop Trump, or they're not happy about his election, and they want to stop another Trump situation. This is what Jen Janai, head of responsible innovation, admitted to in the Veritas video. She says, Elizabeth Warren is saying that we should break up Google, and like I love her, but she's very misguided. Like that will not make it better, it will make it worse, because now all these smaller companies who don't have the same resources that we do will be charged with preventing the next Trump situation. It's like a small company cannot do that. So this is what they seem to believe, that a situation like Trump, a populist leader selected by the people and not the establishment, should not be allowed to gain power again. She then says, 2020, certainty on top of my old organization, trust and safety top of mind. They've been working on it since 2016 to make sure we're ready for 2020. We're also training our algorithms. If 2016 happened again, would the outcome be different? I think it's clear that Google's political bias is just plainly obvious. The idea that they're trying to be ready for 2020, the next US presidential election, they're training algorithms to influence the outcome. If this doesn't sound like an attempt at election meddling, I don't know what is. As you probably know, the Project Veritas video in question was removed by Google because of a third-party privacy complaint, which was likely because people were filmed without their consent. So anyway, the Veritas video goes on to discuss YouTube.
Our insider says political biases are censoring voices on YouTube, owned by Google as well. He says the YouTube rollout discussion was at a rather bizarre location.
We didn't have it. It was a special occasion that happened in May, and they invited us all to the Masonic Temple to talk about the future of the company for YouTube, and they described that they were going to have more content filtering. And right after that happened, a lot of the content creators started to get demonetized, and their videos started to get deranked. I'm talking about Dave Rubin, talking about Carpe Diem, talking about Tim Pool, and a lot of the other content creators that are within the YouTube ecosystem just saw their view counts just go through the floor.
What did YouTube do to make their view counts go down?
So Google is targeting what they consider to be right-wing news commentators. So that includes Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Stephen Crowder, and a host of other right-wing people that they are coming in, they're deciding that they don't want these opinions to have a wide appeal. And so they're coming in and they're putting their thumb down, and they're deciding which content the users are allowed to see.
Now, since the Project Veritas video was published and then subsequently removed by Google, more whistleblowers have come forward. This is only going to accelerate in my view. I believe we're in new territory here. This is serious. I think the leaks are going to become a torrent before too long. James O'Keefe of Project Veritas received a leaked Google email, and it reads as follows. Today, it is often 1 or 2 steps to Nazis. If we understand that PragerU, Jordan Peterson, and Ben Shapiro et al. Are Nazis,
using the dog whistles you mention in step 1,
I can receive these recommendations regardless of the content of what I'm looking at, and I have recorded thousands of internet users sharing the same experience. I don't think correctly identifying far-right content is beyond our capabilities, but if it is, why not go with Meredith's suggestion of disabling the suggestions feature? This could be a significant step in terms of user trust. Well, that is interesting. I have a feeling that many people who speak against political correctness, as I do, are probably on some kind of list at Google, like a spreadsheet somewhere.
Also, it seems that certain Google staff members are about as qualified to identify Nazis as most SJWs, who scream Nazi when someone disagrees with their politics. Shapiro is Jewish, by the way. Have we forgotten that? So anyway, yeah, Shapiro, PragerU, and Peterson are not Nazis, that goes without saying. Also, the Nazis were defeated in 1945, so there's that. Anyway, YouTube is beginning to feel the heat so much that they put out this boilerplate, stock standard, meaningless PR message on Twitter. We've had a lot of questions today, clarifying. We apply our policies fairly and without political bias. All creators are held to the same standard. Well, that ought to do it. Look, the jig is up. Seriously. It's so obvious that you're lying. This is just tiresome. It's simple. They'll say we don't censor, we just remove hate speech or something like that. But hate speech is a nebulous and vague term. It's simply speech that Google hates. But speech that they like, that's no problem. Now, yesterday at a Senate hearing, Ted Cruz questioned Maggie Stanfill, who's a UX director at Google, about the Project Veritas report. This is how that went down.
A lot of Americans have concerns that big tech media companies, and Google in particular, are engaged in political censorship and bias. As you know, Google enjoys a special immunity from liability under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The predicate for that immunity was that Google and other big tech media companies would be neutral public fora. Does Google consider itself a neutral public forum?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, it does.
Incredible that she can honestly say that with a straight face. Now, what we need here is the people who featured in that town hall meeting and Susan Wojcicki. They need to be questioned about what the hell they're doing. Also, it's time for us to start seeing some source code. I want to see the inner workings of the algorithms. Google and all of its brands need to be investigated top to bottom, full audit, turn over everything.
Okay. Are you familiar with a report that was released yesterday from Veritas that included a whistleblower from within Google, that included videos from a senior executive at Google, and that included documents that are purportedly internal PowerPoint documents from Google?
Yes, I heard about that report in industry news.
Have you seen the report?
No, I have not.
So you didn't review the report to prepare for this hearing?
It's been a busy day, and I have a day job, which is digital well-being at Google. So I'm trying to make sure I keep the trains on the
sorry,
tracks.
Wow, so this was the best person that Google could send. The company is enduring a PR nightmare at the moment, and they send this person who has only heard or read about a damning report exposing Google's bias and censorship. And that video, by the way, was censored by Google. And she hasn't even watched it. So she may as well be like, I was busy doing other things. I didn't have time to watch a video exposing major corruption in our company. Sorry about that. I mean, this is the attitude. It's just... Oh, talk about priorities being wrong.
This hearing is impinging on your day job.
It's a great opportunity. Thank you. I really
Well,
appreciate
one of the
it.
things in that report, and I would recommend people interested in political bias at Google watch the entire report and judge for yourself. There's a video from a woman, Jen Janai. It's a secret video that was recorded. Jen Janai, as I understand it, is the head of, quote, responsible innovation for Google. As I understand it, she is shown in the video saying, and this is a quote, Elizabeth Warren is saying that we should break up Google. And like, I love her, but she's very misguided. Like, that will not make it better. It will make it worse. Because all these smaller companies who don't have the same resources that we do will be charged with preventing the next Trump situation. It's like a small company cannot do that. Do you think it's Google's job to, quote, prevent the next Trump situation?
Thank you, Senator. I don't agree with that. No, sir.
Well, she may not. I don't know. But I think we need someone much higher up the chain. Someone in a position of high authority at Google and YouTube. They are the ones to answer these kinds of questions.
So a different individual, a whistleblower identified simply as an insider at Google with knowledge of the algorithm, is quoted on the same report as saying, Google, quote, is bent on never letting somebody like Donald Trump come to power again. Do you think it's Google's job to make sure, quote, somebody like Donald Trump never comes to power again?
No, sir, I don't think that is Google's job. And we build for everyone, including every single religious belief, every single demographic, every single region, and certainly every political affiliation.
Oh, I'm sure Google do allow people of all political affiliations, so long as people with political affiliations and views Google disagrees with don't express those political views.
Well, I have to say that certainly does not appear to be the case. I can tell you what the public records show. The public records show that in 2016, Google employees gave to the Hillary Clinton campaign $1.315 million. That's a lot of money. Care to venture how much they gave to the Trump campaign?
I would have no idea, sir.
Well, the nice thing is it's a round number, $0.00.
No bias there. Honest.
The Veritas report has Google internally saying, I propose we make machine learning intentionally human-centered and intervene for fairness. Is this document accurate?
Thank you, sir. I don't know about this document, so I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to respond to the committee in writing afterwards as to whether this PowerPoint and the other documents that are included in the Veritas report, whether those documents are accurate. And I recognize that your lawyers may want to write explanation. You're welcome to write all the explanation that you want, but I also want a simple, clear answer. Is this an accurate document that was generated by Google? Do you agree with the sentiment expressed in this document?
No, sir, I do not.
This conversation is getting us absolutely nowhere.
Also in this report, it indicates that Google, according to this whistleblower, deliberately makes recommendations if someone is searching for conservative commentators, deliberately shifts the recommendation, so instead of recommending other conservative commentators, it recommends organizations like CNN or MSNBC or left-leaning political outlets. Is that occurring?
Thank you, sir. I can't comment on search algorithms or recommendations.
Oh, for heaven's sake, can you please summon somebody in a position to talk about these things? She's either unwilling or unable to answer these questions. They may as well have sent a member of the cleaning staff or a security guard to represent the company.
So a final question. One of these documents that was leaked explains what Google is doing, and it has a series of steps. Training data are collected and classified, algorithms are programmed, media are filtered, ranked, aggregated, and guaranteed, and that ends with people, parentheses, like us, are programmed. Does Google view its job as programming people with search results?
Thank you, Senator. I can't speak for the whole entire company, but I can tell you that we make sure that we put our users first in our design.
Well, I think these questions raise very serious, these documents raise very serious questions about political bias at the company.
If Ted Cruz wants to deal with this properly, he needs to go Nick Fury on this and assemble a team of experts to interview YouTube and Google top brass. We need a team of tech people on the free speech front line who can ask Google engineers the tough questions about their technology and algorithms, who can read the source code. We're talking about the likes of Andrew Torba of Gab, Bill Ottman of Minds, Ray Vahi of BitChute, the guys at Brave Browser, etc. But there also needs to be representation of some alt-media commentators, the likes of Tim Pool or Styx Hexenhammer or Dave Rubin, to delve deeper and to talk to the management and senior staff. So you're hitting the issue from multiple vectors, the tech side and the senior managerial side. Here's another leaked document, revamping news corpus. Goal: establish single point of truth for definition of news across Google products. Mitigate risk of low quality sources and misinformation in Google News corpus. A single point of truth. Sounds like 1984's Ministry of Truth. There's a fantastic video that Bill Whittle made recently in which he makes a very compelling case for big tech to be broken up. I'll include the video linked below. He talks about the process of generification.
When a trademark or a brand name becomes so dominant that all similar items are called by the brand name, whether they're made by that company or not, we say that the brand name in question, Q-tip, Kleenex, chapstick, or Band-Aid, for example, have undergone a process called generification. The process of turning a brand name into a product description is called genericide. No, it's honest to God a real word. You can just Google it if you want. Whenever you apply a brand name to identify a generic item, you can say at the very least that the product is so dominant in the marketplace that while there is technically at least some competition, there's really no competition.
He mentions how people often refer to cotton swabs as Q-tips. Q-tips are a brand, of course. Not all cotton swabs are made by Q-tip. Similarly, lip balm is a brand of chapstick, like Band-Aid is a brand of bandages. Same thing with Kleenex being a brand of wipes. Yet, we often call a product after the most dominant brand name. Remember when everyone used to call every portable cassette player a Walkman, regardless as to whether it was made by Sony or not? Sony being the creator of the Walkman brand. Well, I do, because I was born in the 80s. I remember when MP3 players were super popular in the early noughties. Even if someone's MP3 player wasn't made by Apple, people would still occasionally call such an MP3 player an iPod. People will say they're going to Google something, even if the search engine they're using isn't Google. When the first Android smartphones emerged on the market some years ago, I remember some people calling them iPhones. You don't hear people do that so much these days, but still. It's a weird phenomenon, and it demonstrates the strength of brand recognition of the most popular and ubiquitous brands on the market.
Here's the problem. Q-tips work exactly the same whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. A Kleenex is no softer on a progressive face than it is on a conservative one. Chapstick equally protects both left and right-wing lips. And a Band-Aid will work exactly the same whether you live in a blue state or a red one. Social media companies are not like that. It's been proven without question that Facebook, the Google search engine, and YouTube use purposely created algorithms to suppress conservative-leaning information and to promote progressive information. That is as unfair, as criminal, as immoral, and as un-American as it can be, and it has to stop. Because no one would tolerate a swab that used cotton for liberal ears but steel wool if you put it inside a conservative ear, or if your Kleenex was made of sandpaper if you didn't vote the way that the folks at Kleenex wanted you to vote. Chapsticks are not made out of sulfuric acid if you live in Texas. And Band-Aid does not sell a tetanus-infected version of the bandage if they find out that a kid with a skinned knee has parents who vote Republican.
Brilliant, lucid, and incredibly clear insight, as always, from Bill Whittle. He maintains that biased search results and suppression of video content constitutes a fraudulent business practice, as it's being done without our consent. Also, he mentions the publisher platform argument, which is the basis of the Section 230 protections of the Communications Decency Act. Now, I don't like the idea of government intervention here, but I feel we've passed the Rubicon at this point. I'm also aware that governments on both sides of the Atlantic are pushing hard for regulation of the internet. I'm not looking for internet regulation. I'm looking for the government to do its job and enforce the rules of the free market to ensure that free speech and free and fair and open competition can continue. Big tech, Google, Facebook, etc., they need to be broken up. They're too big and too powerful. And Facebook might soon have its own cryptocurrency. They already have a huge influence over the public discourse online. Do we really want them to also have a huge influence over the future of e-commerce as well? No member of the public elected some CEO of a social network. But we can elect our public representatives, and we can vote them out of power as well, something we can't do to some Silicon Valley oligarch in charge of running a big tech company. There will, of course, be those in government who will see this as an opportunity to gain control of the internet, or more influence, certainly. Long-term free speech will only truly be protected by tech innovation, in my view. But in the meantime, monopolies with enormous power over our democracy, who seem to want to influence elections, well, they have to be investigated.